I want you to fall in love today with your content. I want you to love your content. Your content has been neglected. Some of you probably haven't looked at your content in over 6 months. For some of you, you may not have paid attention to your content since the last time you built your website. And for some of you, that may have been a long time ago. That may have been a few years ago. Your content matters. Your content is representing you to your audience. And the words that your content uses should reflect the message that you have for your audience. And I want you today to find a passionate love for the written word, for the visual message, and to understand that what you want someone to hear is being reflected in your content, in the message and in the text, in the elements that are on your different online platforms. This includes Google, your website, your social media feeds. This includes the places online where you have a voice, where your clients will hear what you're saying. I want you to love your content because an extension of loving your content is loving your client, loving the mission that you have from God. Your content is a reflection of you and your organization. Very often, your content will be your first impression to your client. First impressions are a significant part of a new relationship, of a new journey with somebody. Your first impression may not be in person. In today's world, your first impression is likely to be a virtual first impression. It may be a first impression that happens through Google or that happens through Facebook. In today's world, it's very likely your first impression will occur without you personally being there, and your content will be representing you. This is not a new concept. It should not be foreign to us. As followers of Jesus, we understand that God's written word is literally a representation to us of who He is. Our written word, naturally, as reflective image bearers of God, also reflects who we are, who our group is, and how we posture ourselves toward different things, how we position ourselves to be helpful and caring and passionate with love and with sincere desires to help these women in need in order to rescue these children who are being endangered. I want you to love your content because it will make the difference on whether or not clients will want to visit with you, since it will make the difference on how they perceive who you are. I want you to love your content. The whole purpose with content strategies, content marketing, and this content effort is to not just simply give somebody a very clear path toward what they're looking for. That's a different story. We are looking to provide someone with a twist, with a right-hand turn, with a change. And that change in the marketing world is referred to as a call to action. That call to action is responsible for taking someone who is looking for something that they think they want to do something about it. That call to action provides us with an avenue to provide someone with our suggestion based on our objective, our business plan, our plan for them in their scenario to be persuasive and drive them, after building some level of trust and rapport, to take the action that we think is best for them. And hopefully they will agree with us when they get to that point. And so when someone starts to show interest in taking action, this call to action is there to serve a very important purpose. It's a creative change. A straight line is not very creative. The creativity comes when you break the pattern, when you essentially take the pen, instead of going straight down the ruler, you make a jagged change, a creative turn and twist, and start to add in some creative fray. Some creative elements that's where creativity comes in. It's not in straightness, but rather in change. I want you to understand that there is a business objective when it comes to your content. We want someone to take action as a result of this content and not simply to drive down a straight, boring highway, but rather we want them to take an exit off the highway and to follow your directions that will drive them to your pregnancy center. We want your readers to have a positive reaction to your content that compels them to take action. They are heading one way, and we want them to go to this better place, to get help. In order to get there, they have to take a turn. And so our desire is for them to take that turn. Our goal is for your client to darken the doorway of your pregnancy center to get them where they can find help. The call to action is in effect our directions on how to get to your center. A call to action often comes in the form of a phone number or a schedule appointment button wrapped in about 20 words that are thought out very carefully to frame the action in a very intentional and helpful light. Let's talk about your audience. Your audience, at risk of choosing abortion, is primarily millennials and sister generations. The interesting thing about today's youth, today's younger people, our audience in this space, is that they prefer certain types of communication in order to comprehend what is being provided. My colleague, Jeremy Lefevre, works at Sears, and he also works for me, creating content. His position at Sears has given him valuable insight into how to communicate. And so I would like to share his story, a case study story with you, so you can find value in his experience as well. Jeremy is a manager of several call centers that span the US and India. His call center employees are mostly millennials. He has found that if he gives them a 400-word memo and then talks to them about the contents of that memo, they usually don't understand what's in the memo and didn't spend time looking at it. But if he provides them with an infographic that includes the same content of what he's trying to share and then talk to them about what's in that message, he finds that they normally comprehend the content much better and that they spent time looking at the content. He has found that they understand what was being delivered at a higher rate when an infographic is in play. Not at a perfect rate, but at a higher rate. And it's important to note that the time spent with the content has increased with the infographic. This is important to understand as it will be relevant when we talk about Google in a bit. So based on that real-life case study of hundreds of millennials in a call center position over several years, we have learned that millennial-age people understand content in the form of an infographic better than a 300, 400-word article or memo that's in written form. I put a lot of weight in these findings that visual elements are an important aspect to how we communicate with our audience. However, we need more than just high-impact graphics to communicate with millennials, as we also need the written word to be highly relevant on Google, as Google puts weight on several aspects of content. So infographics and videos are an excellent way to communicate with millennials because on one hand, millennials will spend more time with stimulating visual elements, and it's not just simply straight, flat copy without graphic design efforts crafted into it. It's the concept of adding gamification to the content to make it more desirable to interact with. Another aspect of this is that these visual elements of videos and infographics take time to ponder and to see, and they sort of have a natural magnetism to help someone spend time with your content. Video will naturally keep you on the page longer because video takes time to observe the content. Time is needed. If a video is a few minutes, watching part of this video will keep the visitor on your page longer. The benefit of someone watching part of a video and following the arrows on an infographic is that we get to keep the visitor on the page for a longer period of time. The reason why it's important for someone to stay on your page is because Google counts the seconds and they measure what people do. So let's talk about the spectrum of what that may look like. So if someone stays on your page for 3 seconds and then they bail and go back to Google and repeat their search and they click on a new result in that search result list, Google marks that as being a low quality, high bounce rate experience. Now that matters because Google wants to be connected with helpful results, not high bounce rate, poor user experiences. If we keep the visitor on the page for 15 seconds and they interact with some of your content because you happen to have a few good Getty images, that's good. Let's say someone stays on your page for 40 seconds and interacts a little bit with an infographic or a video, even better. Let's say this visitor stays on your page for a few minutes and they don't have a need to repeat the search on Google. Now we have crossed the finish line and are in the golden desired zone. It's ideal to help your visitor find what they are looking for so they have a good user experience. When someone finds the desired content, they provide signals to Google that they are satisfied by not returning and doing a repeat search again. For I am fulfilled, I found my answer. I appreciate Google for delivering a good result. This speaks very highly of your organization as being an answer and not a poor search result, but rather being a good answer. I'm going to take a creative twist and go down a slightly different path because I think this is the time for you to understand the value of content. Content is not measured based on the letters after someone's name like PhD or MD. The value in content is not measured based on who wrote it. The value of content is based on what the audience hears your content say. The value of your content can be measured in how your audience reacts and interprets and responds to the message on your page. With this talk that I'm giving, my current audience is primarily an executive director of a pregnancy center. And I hope that you understand what I'm saying. I hope that you put value in what I'm saying. But the words that I'm saying are not what's valuable. Your reaction, your interpretation, your understanding of what I'm saying literally is the measurement tool of how to value what I have done here in this space. And so your role as an audience member isn't just good, it's critical. It's the key element for you to measure what someone has said. If a tree falls in the woods, does it make a noise? Well, yeah, it made a lot of noise, and no one cares because there's no value without an audience. But if someone is in that forest and they're listening to that tree fall in the woods, they have given that noise potential value because there's someone there to appreciate what was done. And how that person responds will determine whether or not that tree falling and making all that noise, what that might mean in the world is based on the audience who interprets that message and those noises being made. With the crashing and the booming out of the somewhat otherwise less noisy environment, if this same talk was given to a different audience, let's say, for example, my daughter's kindergarten class, they would not track what I'm saying, and therefore, what I'm saying would have no value to them. And therefore, it would remove the value of this presentation entirely because they're not in the executive director's seat, in her shoes, in an organization who's trying to help women. They are rather learning how to spell and learning how to do basic arithmetic with addition and subtraction. They would not track what we're saying here in this space, and therefore my presentation would have zero value to an audience of that age. And so it's really important for you to know who your audience is and what language they use, what they need, what would help make their world better. And so you can try and reach your audience in a way that will help them find success, find answers, find benefit. Let's talk about how your content can benefit your clients, the benefits that your client will find. When she hears a message that resonates in a way that she can find value, interpret what's being said in a way that will help her solve pain points in her life, help her find answers to questions that she has been trying to figure out for the first time because she's never had an unplanned pregnancy before, and she doesn't work with women facing unplanned pregnancies every day for the last 12 to 28 years. This is her first time. It's all new. She is currently experiencing a lack of logic because her stress level has spiked. The world is currently full of unemployment and all sorts of weird upside down things are going on. And at the same time, her personal world just got turned even more upside down because now she is unemployed and she has an unplanned pregnancy, and there's even more desire to have an abortion because of all of these risk factors being amplified. And all that to say, she is looking for answers. Just know that she needs you to speak her language. And so the answers that she is looking for, the client benefit that she needs, is to find help. It's to find someone who can help her become informed on her options while helping her regain logic, helping her regain her ability to think, her ability to slow down and breathe, her ability to understand what's further down the road, removing some of that fog, clouding her vision, helping her see a little bit more full spectrum when it comes to what's going on in front of her, and how she might respond and make decisions, helping her see further down the road beyond a few months to get a glimpse to where she may be in 5 years, 10, 20 years, giving her more perspective. And so getting help, getting informed are the benefits the client will receive, even though she may not be searching for, quote, help or, quote, information. But that's part of what we're trying to give her through the ultimate benefit of giving her a message that will be delivered and heard. She's restricted in her ability to think logically during this stressful time where a lot is going on. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot multiplied by 3 compared to last year. Another benefit that she may not understand when she comes to your content initially is that she needs a friend at a pregnancy center. She needs someone who will care for her, who will help her regain that logic, who will help her get the information that she needs, and who will help her reduce her anxiety, give her someone who will she can depend on as she starts to travel down this rocky, difficult road. With the need for the ability to regain logic, vision, and for someone to give her hope. Those client benefits are what we're trying to deliver to your audience. The way we get there is by using what the client is looking for that lines up with what we're trying to provide a vehicle for us to give those client benefits, which is to provide services that are free, that are confidential, that would include a pregnancy test with someone who can help provide confidence in the pregnancy test being done correctly, ultrasounds, where someone can then provide information on what the ultrasound means through medical interpretation, diapers, material assistance, educational opportunities that will give someone confidence on this new road. And counseling and guidance is sort of the overarching piece where someone will get advice and be able to ask questions and get honest, helpful answers. Now, when you're talking to your audience, your voice is what they hear, and I want you to talk. When you're working on content, I want your content to speak to one person at a time. I want you to speak to just one. I want you to love the word you. Love you, the word you. The word you is a powerful word in the English vocabulary because it allows us to speak to the person that is reading the content. The word you will allow us to engage our audience at a higher degree than if we're talking to a big room full of 300 people listening all at the same time and I'm not addressing anyone because I'm in front of this great lecture hall. I want you to soften your voice, say things with a gentleness and a care, and use the word you in a way that will make it feel like you are actually sitting there holding that young woman's hand, looking her in the eyes and tearing up while she is going through this very difficult time. Put yourself in your client's shoes when you're trying to understand how to speak in a language and in a voice that your client will understand. Your team is not your client. I am not your client. I often have to try and take off my size 13 Birkenstocks and try and imagine sitting where a young abortion vulnerable woman who just found out that she might be pregnant is sitting. I try and imagine putting myself in her shoes. You need to do the same thing because you are not in her situation today. Even if you are a woman who has gone through an unplanned pregnancy, you're not going through it today. But you understand what she's going through because you talk to these clients every day. You understand what's going through her head and how things register thanks to body language, thanks to reactions. When you say something and she responds a certain way, you're gaining information. You're bored? Not so much. They're disconnected. They don't know what it's like to be on the ground level. They have an intellectual desire to help save lives, but they are depending on you, the executive director, to give them access to the ground level, to how the client responds. And I am much like a board member who gets access to the ground level of how a client responds based on my interactions with executive directors. And so I may be harsh on board members because they're often distant and not connected to what the client really does in these scenarios because I'm in that same boat. And it's possible to gain that knowledge through your experience. And I would encourage you to share a lot of what's going on with your board and with people like me so that we can understand what you're going through and how to communicate with your audience. The young woman in front of you, one young woman at a time, and how we can help her, how we can hear her, meet her where she is. When you speak to her, use the word you, bring that down to one. Your experience talking with her is key in so many ways to how we can communicate and help her. And when talking to her, we need to find a balance between truth and hyperbole. By having a positive posture, which my friend and colleague Bill Ackerley coined as honest hyperbole, where we put a positive edge on the truth, but essentially promoting something that we want someone to do, while still keeping it full of integrity, but yet also likely to be picked because it has a positive aura, positive atmosphere, and it's desirable for someone to pick. If I give you two options and I promote one as being beautiful and I promote the other as being full of regret, the option that is postured as being desirable, being popular, being often picked with good reviews matters. And so it's important that when you are talking about the options to embrace honest hyperbole, where we don't promote bad ideas, but we do promote good ideas in a way that someone wants to pick them. That's important. The message is what you want someone to hear that brings value to the conversation. The copy is the words that you say to get someone to hear that message. Real Options Obria out of San Jose has impressed me with how they use certain language. And their tagline for a long time was, "You have time, be informed." You have time, that's part of the copy. The message of you have time is slow down. Don't make a rash decision, breathe. That's what that delivers. You have time, slow down. Be informed is part of the copy as well. What that translates into when someone hears be informed, that says, talk to me, schedule an appointment. Let's start a conversation and help you find the answers that you're searching for. Let's hope you make a decision that will be good when you look back in 20 years. Be informed. You have time, ... space, ... be informed. And those ellipses, those ... are also important. That's part of the copy, saying there's a lot in the middle. There's a lot in the middle, but we want you to read this and we want you to talk to us and find out what those ellipses represent on both ends of this slogan. Let's talk about what not to say, or to understand what not to say through your messaging. In the marketing world, we use the word landmines. In the pregnancy center world, we often refer to it as put-offs, for those who talk about it because it sounds a little bit less destructive. Both landmines and put-offs represent what we're going to talk about next, which is what not to say. We're going to apply some of the things we've just learned by explaining why some of these things are not good to say. When I say, I don't just mean text, I mean pictures, I mean messages, I mean what someone hears, regardless of what the copy might actually be. Let's define your top-level audience as being abortion-minded clients, the woman who is shopping to get an abortion at Planned Parenthood or some equivalent, and she finds your content on Google. She is not shopping to be pregnant. She is not shopping for prenatal. She is not shopping for baby shoes. She is not shopping for a pregnant belly. She is shopping to not be pregnant. She's not shopping for parenting classes. She is shopping to not be pregnant. She's not shopping for a pro-life speaker. She is shopping to not be pregnant. She's not shopping for Christianese. She is shopping to not be pregnant. She's not shopping for prayer requests, volunteer opportunities, your walk for life. She is shopping to not be pregnant. She's not shopping for your list of donors. She's not shopping for a photo of your board of directors. She is shopping to not be pregnant. She's not shopping for your donation tool. She is not shopping for content about your history, about your donor-facing Facebook page. She is shopping to not be pregnant. She's not shopping for information about your new ultrasound machine. She is shopping to not be pregnant. So when you want to talk to your donors, do it in a different room. do it in a different space, do it in a different vehicle, do it under a different brand, or at least a different spelling of the same brand, because your clients and donors both matter. But that content, i.e. the message/copy that you have for your donors, is dramatically different. It's in a different direction, it's in a different space, it's in a different voice, because it's for a different audience. That brings different values. If your client sees the content that's for your donors, the value changes. The value changes because your audience's perception of what you were saying determines the value of what you just said. And so if your donors hear your donor message, you have an opportunity to have off the charts awesome value. And if your clients hear your donor message, you have an opportunity to fail. To have a virtual landmine drive them back to Google, to have a gentler said put off drive them back to Google and mark you as being the wrong answer for the question they are searching to answer. I want you to have content worth finding under the right brand, for the right audience, at the right time. I want you to love your content. I want your content to no longer be neglected by not taking it to dinner. I want you to take your content to dinner. Print it off, take it to dinner with a pen, with a friend who would like to meet your content. I want you to spend time giving your content some one-on-one time. I want you to look at it because it represents who you are. Just like the Bible represents who God is to us, your content represents you. What you say in this content represents how you're communicating to people when they read your words, when they see these pictures, when they play with these infographics, when they watch these videos, when they see your marketing slogan. This represents you and your group. By loving your content, you're loving your neighbor. By loving your content, you're loving yourself. You're giving yourself value. By loving your content becomes relevant and impactful. Loving your content is really, really important. Over the last 7 years, we've had a major transition with how content matters and with how content works. 7 years ago, I heard from Donna Heckey with Real Options Obria, and this may have been before she was with Obria. She said to me that Google passed word of mouth on her intake forms. Really? She said Google passed word of mouth by a friend, by a professional, on her intake forms. If you would have asked me the day before she said that to me, I would have said never. I would have said, word of mouth will always be number one. It's been number one forever. Since the dawn of time, people have made decisions on which restaurant to go to based on word of mouth. From the dawn of time, pregnancy centers have had word of mouth as their number one item on their intake forms. Word of mouth by a friend, word of mouth by a professional. If you group them up, they're like a supercharged intake form item. So 7 years ago, Google passed word of mouth in San Jose. And to be fair, Google is headquartered in San Jose, so that might be a good place for a change like this to start. Last year, at the NIFLA conference, I talked to a lot of people, and several at that conference mentioned to me that Google had passed word of mouth for them as well. They were in medium-sized markets and large markets, and then some, when talking with people who were in small markets, said word of mouth is either tied with Google or it's becoming a really close race. And so it's not really based on the size of the market. I think it's really based on a cultural change. It's based on a cultural change. 10 years ago, if someone would have said, what do you think I should do about this washer and dryer that's giving me an error code? Someone would have said, ask Jim. He works on those all the time. But today, no one says, talk to Jim. Jim doesn't get as many phone calls like that anymore. People say, Google it. Google the error code. Look it up. They didn't say 8 years ago, go look it up at the library. They said, go talk to Jim. When someone says, what should I do when I'm pregnant, and I didn't expect to get pregnant, and my boyfriend won't be understanding, people don't go to someone nearly as often asking for advice because Google provides confidentiality at a new level without having to tell even one person. And when you ask yourself, what should I do about this something, the common response today is to Google it. Perhaps in your mind, or if you do ask Jim, who's been overworked for a decade, he may tell you to Google it and let me know if there's any help that he can provide. Because there's been a cultural change. We could all figure it out, finding answers to our questions through looking up content from people who have created excellent content online. And these answers are worthwhile. As soon as it becomes quicker to Google something than to look it up in the yellow pages started to go away. And as soon as it became better when it came to finding results to Google it versus asking someone for advice, the transition began. There's been a transition on how people look up information. And word of mouth is not falling off the map like Yellow Pages has. Word of mouth has slipped into number 2. And I honestly never thought word of mouth would ever be number 2. Google has done a lot of impossible feats, or at least they did a lot of feats that seemed impossible, and beating word of mouth, I would add to that list. They have made a cultural change in how people look up information and how they answer questions. Being on Google, Google Organic, Google Pay-Per-Click, Google My Business, Google Local with Maps, being on Google in all of those places is really important because it's like having word of mouth marketing work for you 7+ years ago. And so it's really, really important to be in all of those places on Google because Google is the top intake forum result for large markets, medium-sized markets, and usually tied in smaller markets or close behind in smaller markets. And so you need to be on Google. Google took on another impossible feat about a decade ago to measure quality of content. And that's not something they just do once and then they're done with it. That's something that they will progress and they will continue to improve upon as they improve artificial intelligence to measure the flags that people do when looking at high quality content. And that's why time matters on the page. That's why the content that you write or that your vendor writes and that's being put out there as a representation of who you are matters. Google has built tools to look at the flags that are raised in reaction to good content, such as someone quoting you, and other flags can indicate bad content based on bounce rates and whether someone needs to do a repeat search. Google understands who the author is based on all sorts of ideas, and I'm not saying that these ideas are spelled out, as Google doesn't share their secret recipes, but they do have a blog and they do have measurable results. And so a lot of us experts will utilize various tools to measure how Google responds. To understand what Google is measuring, we often use intelligence because Google is a really smart group. And by using intelligence, we often arrive at the same rooms or spaces when it comes to making decisions and having the right posture. And the right posture when it comes to making content is to make high quality content that is not written to have keyword stuffing or hidden text or to break any rules with shortcut work, but to make it for people who will enjoy it and they will have a positive reaction and they will quote you because you said it really well. Pulling content from national authoritative voices to echo the experts that are in our nation. So you're not trying to claim medical content as being yours. These rules are spelled out by Google. These rules are also spelled out by intelligence. It's as if people that work to meet the needs of their audience in the best possible way will also play into the fact that Google is also a, quote, faux member of that same audience. We need to understand how to make content that Google will be able to appreciate and measure as being high quality. And we'll also try to meet the business objectives of your organization by getting your clients to take the right decisions. Getting your audience to see your content needs to be part of that strategy. Getting your content to show up on Google as being marked as high quality is part of the plan. Now I'm going to give you a little more insight on how Google also measures content with scores. They score content on a rating system of not scored, meaning not worth looking at, all the way to 10 out of 10. For example, how often Google shows you in a search result for a certain search word, such as is it less than 10% of the time, or is it closer to 30% of the time of all the search results on that given phrase? This is a reflection of how Google is measuring your content against other sources in your area. Google provides data for you to use. My name is Jacob Barr, and I am the owner of iReps.com. I hope that you will use my contact information to reach out so I can start a conversation with you. I want you to fall in love today with your content. I want you to love your content.